Welcome to Spectrum Perspectives, real talk with parents, professionals, and autism advocates. With your host, Cindy Gellermini.
Today, we're going to be speaking with Darya. She lives in California, and she is an adult with Asperger's syndrome, which is high-functioning autism. She's going to tell us today about being diagnosed as a child and how her biggest struggle was reading social cues and making friends in school, and how she got over that and taught herself how to read social cues and how to learn how to interact and get along with people, and what life is like now as an adult. Hi, everybody. This is Cindy, and welcome to another episode of Spectrum Perspectives. And this time, we are not going to interview a mom that has someone with autism. We are going to interview Darya. Hi, Darya.
Hey, how are you?
And you have Asperger's, correct?
Yep, that's correct.
Okay, so you go by Asperger's and not autism, or both? Or?
Right.
Okay.
I do say Asperger's just because if I do say autism, people that I go by Asperger's.
Yeah, because I just have heard recently that they don't use that title, that description anymore. They don't use the word Asperger's anymore. They just lump everybody under autism. I didn't know if that was true or not, or if you've heard that or no.
I mean, I think that is probably technically true because I do know that Asperger's falls under the autistic spectrum. But I guess I'm not totally up to date. Sorry.
Can I ask how old you are?
Yeah, I'm 30.
You are? Okay. So my son would be your age. Usually when I'm talking to moms, I ask them, how was your pregnancy? How was the delivery of the baby? How was their development leading up to when they were diagnosed? The child was diagnosed with autism. So I can't ask you the same questions, but I do kind of want to know the same thing. I want to know, how old were you when you were diagnosed with autism? And I don't know if your mom or your parents have talked to you about, like, when you were a baby, did they see, like, did you talk late? Were there any kind of signs, those type of things?
Sure. So I was diagnosed at about 9 or 10, I believe. I was pretty young, but I wasn't an infant or anything.
Yeah.
And I was adopted at the age of 2. So what my adoptive mom found out was by observation. And so she noticed when I was a toddler that I really didn't like being held, and I didn't have social interactions the way that toddlers do at that developmental stage. And then throughout elementary school, middle school, elementary, middle, my social understanding was not so great. It wasn't like the worst of the worst, but it was definitely not what it should be, given kids' social development.
Do you have any siblings? Do you have any brothers or sisters?
I have an adopted sister.
Is she older than you or younger?
She's 2 years younger.
Younger. Okay. I was just wondering if your mom said that you weren't interacting socially. I was just wondering, who was she comparing you to? Like,
she was comparing me to my playmates at school. And then, of course, once we adopted my sister when I was 8 and my sister was 6, she noticed then that there were social differences, and that, I had issues with understanding emotional nuance and how to relate to people from a more emotional, social level. And, also as a kid, I didn't understand humor. I was very literal. Everything was black and white.
Yes.
And I remember my mom would even say to me, Darya, you need to lighten up because it's just not that serious.
Right.
And it just took me a while to learn that, okay, so this is what humor is. These are the kinds of humor. This is what's appropriate. This is what isn't. This is what sarcasm is. This is when you use it. This is when you don't. I mean, I taught myself a lot of that, but I also had a lot of services.
Yeah, I'm from New Jersey. We're very sarcastic here.
Well, good, because now I'm fluent.
Yeah. Oh, are you?
Yeah. So beginning to think that maybe on the resume, other languages spoken, yeah, sarcasm.
Sarcasm. I love that. That's
Just
funny.
kidding. English
Um,
sarcasm.
But as far as academically, though, were you were okay? You were reading and you were on target with
I
everybody else academically?
I was very, very, very good academically. The where I did struggle academically was the reading comprehension,
Hmm.
and also the auditory processing, which did eventually get better.
Okay.
But the auditory processing and the reading comprehension were key in certain academic struggle. But I do remember teachers always saying, well, she's bright, but she can't make friends. What's happening here?
Yeah. So like, give me an example of, were the kids picking on you, or did you just, it was something that you just felt yourself that you couldn't really just relate to them, or you had
Well,
trouble putting yourself out there to make friends with them?
I definitely had trouble, and I was also teased a lot. I was teased for being socially awkward, socially different. The teasing wasn't like horrendous. I've heard a lot of stories that are far worse than anything I've been through, but I was left out of stuff. I wasn't invited to things. I couldn't, hop into a conversation the way I can now. I couldn't relate. And, a lot of my friends were older, and a lot of my friends now are still a lot older than me. And now of course I can relate better, but yeah, it was so tough as a kid.
Um, so like, what did you do at lunchtime? Did you sit by yourself, or did you sit with other people, or?
I often sat by myself. I had a book, I had my Game Boy. I was totally engrossed in that. And, because I didn't fully understand the benefits to social development, I didn't really care. I was so happy to have my book and my Game Boy and
Right.
totally be on my own and independent. It was fine.
Okay.
I would just get so enthralled in something, and that was where like the perseveration stuff happened, and that's another key thing for people who have Asperger's or high functioning autism is perseverating. And I have to catch myself now. It's like, okay, wait a second, nobody cares. Stop talking.
Like, what did you perseverate on?
So I'm a huge Disney fan, and I always have been. And so when I was younger, I would watch the same Disney movie, Mulan, over and over and over again.
That's what my
And
son did. I know all the words to all the Disney
yeah,
movies, all of them, because we watched them thousands of times.
again and again and again and again and
Yes,
again.
yes.
I would
And can
talk.
you explain
So
that to me? Because my son was nonverbal. So whenever I can talk to somebody that, is autistic or has seizures or whatever, I always want to know, what is it like? What is he going through? Because I don't know. I'm trying to read his mind. So how can you watch
basically,
the same thing over and over and just not get sick of it?
I think it's because when you have um, autism, your brain naturally pays attention to small details. And so when you watch the same thing, you're watching these small details, and you're almost like a scientist. And it's like you don't get tired of it because you are studying the movie as you're watching it. You're looking at the colors, I mean, for me, I would look at the way the animations were drawn. I would look at the little details in the buildings. I would look at the background. I would look at the colors. I would look at all the things that weren't emotionally related. I would just study it, look at it again and again and again. And there really isn't a whole lot of sense to it other than the brain just is like, okay, I'm on this now, and I'm just going to keep doing it.
Right.
And I remember I would go to school and I would talk about Mulan to everybody and everything. And I had a friend, Cody, who would come up to me. He was in my grade. It was like third grade. I was 8. And he'd come up to me and he'd go, Darya, Mulan, get over it. Because to him, he couldn't understand why in the world I was talking about it so much.
Right.
But for me, it was like, well, I'm interested in this thing, and I'm going to talk about it because I'm interested in it,
Right.
not because I'm looking at your cues telling me that you're bored.
Right. Right. Yeah. So you're missing the cues. They're not looking at you really, or they're like, okay, yeah,
You're right.
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 Got it. Got it. What about, do you have any kind of oversensitivity to sounds or sense of touch or any kind of thing like that? And if any of your other senses affected in any way or no?
So when I was a toddler and a very young kid, I had sensitivity to hearing. There were certain noises that were like screaming loud to me. I don't remember what they were because I was a toddler then.
Mm-hmm.
But then I do remember that um, while I was in elementary school, I had a certain sensitivity to certain fabrics. So if fabric didn't feel soft enough to me, I didn't like it. I just was like, no, 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 I'm not wearing that.
Right.
And it's funny because all of those sensory overload issues eventually went away.
Really?
I don't have them anymore.
Hmm. So really the main issue was just social.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And so you had to teach yourself. How did you do
Yeah.
that? How do you learn how to read people's cues, their facial expressions and things like that?
Well, part of it is that I was involved in programs that were targeted for social emotional development. So as I would go to these classes and work with people one-on-one, they would tell me, these are the things you need to look out for. These are the things that create what we call like being social. And so I would study it. And again, it's that attention to detail thing.
Mm-hmm.
I would study it. And every interaction I ever had with people, I would look at their face. I would run through the category of list in my mind of like, okay, could they be feeling this? Could they be feeling this? Could they be thinking this? Could they be thinking that? And just repetition of every encounter, I would slowly train my brain to start thinking socially. And I think because I have a visual memory, I could picture things and have them as videos that I could go back to in my mind and go, okay, so and so had this face and they said this thing. That means they're probably thinking that. And I would make associations.
Mm-hmm.
So it was all about connecting the dots.
Where did you go for a class like this?
It was through Floor Time, which is a specific program for early childhood development, especially for those on the spectrum.
So it's a place that your mom used to take you when you were a kid?
Yeah, a kid, and then through like middle school even.
Okay, so it was after school. This is a place that you would go to and you would take these classes.
Yeah, and then they would have somebody work with me one-on-one. And the whole premise of Floor Time has to do with one, the trainer or the teacher, so to speak, and then the client or patient. And it would be a one-on-one thing. And I don't really know the complete details of it, but the way that the program worked essentially was that one-on-one time gave the student a chance to learn how to be social, and it's amazing. It worked.
Huh. I think there's a lot of, I think everybody should go through that, through those classes. I remember when Robbie was little and he was in school, one of the big things they worked on was just teaching him how to sit still in his chair, and just attend and not to keep getting up and running around the room,
Right.
and all the kids in his class. He was 3 years old at the time. And then I was babysitting a friend and we went to McDonald's and Robbie was sitting nicely at McDonald's and this other boy kept running around the restaurant.
Oh my
And
gosh.
I didn't know how to get him to sit still. And I said, I think every kid should spend their first year at a school for autism and learn all these, learn how to sit still, learn how to go to the bathroom, learn how to do all these things. It would be great.
Yeah. Yeah, it would be.
So you mentioned that you're very a visual learner, right? You remember, okay.
Yeah,
And I know that you're a big fan of Temple Grandin, okay?
I am.
And for people that don't know, she's sort of like the guru, when it comes to autism. She's like the most famous autistic person that we know, right? Because they did a
Truly.
movie about her life, and I saw, and I'm also very visual. Like I have a hard time remembering people's names, but
Yeah.
I have to see it written down, you know, and I
Right.
remember
Right.
things that I see, right? And
Yep.
I'll remember that you were wearing glasses and you were wearing a gray hoodie and your hair was pulled back, all these visual cues, right? But I'll forget your name, right?
Yeah. Right.
Just because it's
Exactly.
just right, but I remember the visual things. So in the very beginning of her movie, they showed her, she walked into a room and it showed the drawing of everything that she was seeing in that room. It was showing you how her brain worked and
Yeah.
how visual she was. And she was like really like taking down like a whole drawing of and I was like, man, that's how my brain works. I totally get that. You know, totally get
Yeah.
that. So
Yeah.
yeah, so give me some examples if you can of try to explain to me how your brain works. Like if you came into, I don't know, let's say you get invited to a party,
Mhm.
okay? And you go into the room. First of all, and also I had to learn social, you know, how to get along with people as well. I don't like walking into a room where I don't know everybody in the room, you know, I'm
Me either.
uncomfortable. Right?
Right.
I think a lot of people don't, but I think it's worse for some other people that have anxiety. And so, yeah. So how do you handle a situation like that?
Well, now, given a lot of the things I know now, I just sort of go with, well, what, who do I know, if anybody?
Hmm.
Obviously, there's going to be one person I know
Right.
because
When
if I'm
someone invited
invited to a
you.
party, right?
Hmm.
So I think, okay, well, I know this person, so let me go try and talk to them.
Hmm.
And then another thing, so that'll build a little bit of a foundation. So I go talk to them and then I'm okay.
Right.
Let's say that they're busy, they're not around, they're doing something else. Then I look around and see if somebody's wearing something that I know about. Like, let's say somebody wears, you
A
know,
Mulan t-shirt? No.
a Mulan t-shirt. For the sake of this example, let's say they're wearing a
Yeah.
Mulan t-shirt.
Mhm,
I may go over to them and then
mhm,
say something like, "Oh my gosh, I love Mulan too."
mhm,
And so then you establish that connection because it's a topic both of you know about.
mhm.
And I think that with Temple Grandin talks about this a lot, but for those on the spectrum, sometimes the way we get into a conversation is going to be about finding something that we both know.
Mhm,
Because for me, and I think Temple Grandin is maybe similar, although I don't want to speak for her, of course.
mhm.
I'm kind of like if I know something intellectually, we're gonna be okay, we're gonna be friends because it's that intellectual thing that we can connect on.
Right,
Um, Temple says shared interest. That's sort of the same thing. You know,
right,
Mulan t-shirt is the shared interest of Mulan slash Disney.
right,
And then, you know, you're talking about Mulan, then you're talking about Disney,
right,
talking about whatever, next thing you know, you have a new friend.
right. But then will you, I would expect if I met somebody that, you know, obsesses over Mulan or whatever, that they would keep talking about that subject over and over and over again, like you did when you were little. And do you know how to do the back and forth, how to stop and listen to what the other person is saying? I mean, I
I
could
do
tell that you
now.
do because we're having this account conversation, you know, but so is that something that you learned or that's something that you just know naturally?
I
I'm just
had
trying
to
to
teach
figure out
myself.
where you've come socially, like compared to before
Okay.
to now.
Okay. I see. So I had to teach myself that. And again, that had a lot of it had to do with observation.
Hmm.
And I remember when there were certain people in my life who I met where I knew I could tell that that person was socially very good. Like what I mean is it was easy for them. So I would literally think, okay, let me be around them so that I can be like that.
Yeah.
So I'd hang around them and I'd kind of copy their habits, sort of copy what they're doing.
Hmm.
And it seems robotic because you're like
I was going to
copying
say
something.
some people, autistic people do it robotically. Yeah.
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 And it was for a while. It was
Yeah.
very robotic.
Yeah.
I would say the same things. I would do the same things. I would have the same facial features. I'd have, not features, expressions.
Yes.
I would do their mannerisms
Yeah.
because I wanted to learn what it was like to be this person who was socially the butterfly.
Right. Right.
So there were a lot of people in my life who I would learn how to do that. And then over time, it just became more of a natural thing and less of a robotic thing. So it
Got
was
it.
a progress. It was very progressive. And I mean, it was a spectrum in and of itself.
Right. Yeah, because I've seen kids where they heard a joke, that's something that they thought was funny, so they'll keep repeating that phrase over and over again, trying to get other people to laugh, but it's not
Uh-huh.
at an appropriate time, and it doesn't make any sense.
My whole childhood is that. I
Yeah,
would literally, I'd hear something that I thought was funny,
yeah,
and I would say it at every opportunity. Every
yes,
time I'd go out to dinner with somebody or whatever, I'd say the line in the movie I would reference,
yes.
and everybody would be like, huh?
What are you talking about? Yeah, I know. But I
Okay.
realize, oh, okay, that you're trying to be funny. You're trying to make
Yeah,
people laugh, which is cute. But
yeah. But it's so out of context.
yeah,
And see, that's another thing is that I had to learn what the word context meant and
yes.
how to apply it to various scenarios. And as soon as I figured out context and applicability of like, okay, these conversations happen for this reason, these conversations happen for that, and I would start to draw the associations, then everything became more of a natural thing. Whereas before it was like, well, if we're going out to an Italian restaurant, I would think about all the Italian restaurant references that I could think of, and I would talk about the history of ciabatta bread, and it's like,
Right,
"Girl, we're just getting dinner, okay?"
right.
Nobody cares about the ciabatta
Yes,
bread history, but me.
yes. Yeah, yeah.
Whatever it is.
I remember watching a dating show on TV one time, and these two people got set up, and the guy, he he started just talking about computers, and he just started talking about everything having to do with computers, and she really couldn't get a word in. And at the end, they asked her, what did she think of the date, and she's like, well, after he downloaded all that information to me, and just always stuck out to me. And I look back now and I'm like, I wonder if he was on the spectrum. I don't know.
Could have been. Could have been.
Maybe. So I'm assuming that you work now, because I know you're independent, right? You live on your
Yeah,
own,
I
right?
do. I
Okay,
do.
so, and do you have a job?
I do.
Okay.
I have a few. I mean, I do my writing for my blog. I volunteer through my interfaith church. But I also work at Blue Bottle Coffee, and I just got a job at Phil's Coffee.
Hmm.
That's like to pay the bills while I'm working on my passion projects
Well, I'm just
because,
wondering, because if you're very visual and stuff, I'm just wondering like what you're good at, right? What your strengths are. Are you working in something within that, or are you trying to do something that maybe is not a good fit?
no, I'd say that I am working on something that's a good fit for me because, even though I am a visual learner, I really like a job where the other part of my brain is challenged. It has a challenge because for me, the visual and the what is it, the kinesthetic side of work is so easy and natural. I get bored.
Hmm.
So that's when I was at university at Loyola, I studied theology because theology is very abstract, and I knew that this was something that I needed to really work at understanding.
Hmm.
And then it delves into like ethics and social justice, and that challenge is what I like because it's not going to be a mundane thing. There's always going to be something that I have to learn about in a different way. And so that's why I do interfaith work, because I do love it, but it's also a challenge for my brain.
Hmm.
I don't want to be bored,
Yeah, me either.
you know.
Yeah. Wait, and you work at a coffee place, you said?
Yeah, I work at Blue Bottle Coffee right now,
And
and
so you're interacting with people all day long?
yes, I
You're
am, and
using those social skills now every day, right?
I am, and it's a challenge. There are times when it's very challenging,
Hmm.
because it's learning the nuance of not taking it too seriously and also not taking anything personally.
Yes.
Um, because what's funny is when they trained me for like making the espresso and doing pour over and those more kinesthetic things, I instantly got it. It was so fast. It was
Sure.
like, oh, okay. So now it's about how do I get better at the social side? Because for me, that's where it's a little tricky, but I'm getting there.
Well, working any retail job is very difficult, dealing with people. It really is. And I I was an artist. I painted murals. You can see behind me one of the murals that I painted. And I went from
Nice.
doing that, I went to work in a paint store because he wanted a designer to work in there to help people choose their paint colors. And I had a really hard time the first year dealing with customers all day because I was used to being alone, painting by myself all day. And
Right.
now to be thrown into this world where I had to talk to people all day, every day, and just dealing with all the different personalities, and some people are irritating. You're not going to love everybody that comes in,
No, you're
and
not.
I would make an excuse and I'd say I have to go fax something, and I would go into the back room and I would wait till they would leave. So I would come back.
That's funny.
So, but over time, I got better and better, and I learned how to just tolerate all different types of people, and I learned how to be very patient with all the different people. And like you said, you learn how to not take things personally. You realize, hey,
Yeah,
some people had a bad day and they're just in a bad mood, and it has
right,
nothing to do with me. And
right.
some people are very nice. There's just all different types, and it's really, wow. I give you a lot of credit, for.
Well, and I think that anybody who's on the spectrum, I think if they had a chance to work in retail or at a coffee shop or something, it also teaches them mind flexibility, and it will expand your flexible thinking,
Mhm.
because to work with a different set of personalities, you have to learn how to adjust. And sometimes for some on the spectrum, and I think me on some level,
Mhm.
adjusting and transitioning from this to that and the multitasking, it's a skill, and this teaches you that. And
Right.
if nothing else, that's a good lesson to learn.
Right. You were in public school and you did fine in
Yeah.
public school and all the way up through high school, right?
Yeah, high school, I ended up going to New Roads, which is a private school.
Okay.
And it was very, very, very socially to the left, which is good for me. It was very social justice oriented, environmental justice, and for me, that's like amazing. So I fit in very well there. But at New Roads, they had a spectrum program that I was in for people on the spectrum.
Okay.
We had certain, meetings and everything, and that helped a lot too.
Yeah, good. Good.
Yeah.
So what about your social life now?
My social life now is pretty good. I can relate to people. I can easily have conversations that I didn't used to have like 10 years ago.
Mhm.
I can make friends a lot easier now. I love networking. I reached out to you and I was like, oh,
Mhm.
she saw my Instagram. Let me
Yeah.
reach out to her.
Yeah, yeah, which was great.
Yeah, so I found that I really enjoy networking. I really enjoy that connection thing, and it's just so much easier now, and doesn't mean that it's perfectly easy all the time, but I'm glad it's easier now.
Yeah. What about love life? Anything going on in there?
Well, no, that's the thing is for some reason the dating scene, as much as I like the idea of it,
Mhm.
every time I've tried to have a boyfriend or something, something just wouldn't click.
Mhm.
And I don't know if it's the social stuff, I don't know if it's other things. Um, it's tough for me.
Yeah,
I see a
right.
lot of
They should have
people
a
just,
class for that too.
they should,
You know?
they should.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's different because dating, it's an emotional nuance that you really have to be kind of very fluid in your thinking, because dating is not a precise science. And I think that's why, especially when I was a teenager and a young adult, it was impossible, because, when your brain thinks more black and white and sometimes more scientific-ish, data-ish,
Mhm.
dating is not that at all.
Right.
And so you can't study your subject and think, okay, well, today they're this and tomorrow they're this, and then, what can we find about this? No, it doesn't work like that.
Right. Right.
I did know, like, if I look back and I think of who I had a crush on in middle school or high school, I would think to myself, well, maybe I thought about them more often than I should, but I knew always that there was a line and you don't cross certain lines.
Yeah,
There's
you
a
understand.
boundary.
But that's good that you
So,
understand boundaries, because I don't
yeah,
think everybody
yeah,
does. Yeah.
right.
You were really teaching yourself.
But I liked it. It was, I wasn't teaching myself because of lack of services. It was pure motivation to want to make friends because I knew that in this world, um, you have to learn how to do that. And I was determined to do it. And I really wanted to be good at it. And if I want to be good at something, I'm going to find a way to be good at that thing,
Right.
whatever it is. And
Right.
I don't give up.
Mm-hmm. So you wrote an article for, you told me about it. Was it for Autism Speaks or for an autism magazine?
I wrote an article for the Santa Monica Daily Press,
Okay.
and it was
What was it about?
basically, it was about my experiences with Asperger's, and just kind of one part of it was, here's my experience. The other part of it is, as a result of understanding somebody with autism, Asperger's, this will help us understand people. And it was a friend of mine had said, hey, you should write an article about this. I'll help you get published. And at first I thought, oh no, I don't want anybody to know. And oh my God, it's just one more thing to make me different. And he said, that's just it. Just do it. Like, it's okay. So I did. I just did.
So you wrote it, and then what? You gave it to him and he sent it to the newspaper?
Yeah, I wrote it and we edited it probably 50 or 60 times. And we sent it to the publisher and it was published within
What
a
was it
week.
about in general?
Like, what's in it is basically me writing about learning how to function in today's society as a result of having Asperger's, and then the ways that I did that. So, like, reading all the Temple Grandin books, watching Temple Grandin videos, teaching myself these social skills, the transition from having a more severe-ish Asperger experience to being somebody who nobody thinks I have it. Because a lot of people I meet, they go, wow, you have Asperger's or you're autistic? What? It's like, yeah, no, I I am. And that's the thing, is that you can't assume what somebody is, but it's good to have these discussions to help create understanding.
And what would you like people to understand? What message would you like to put out there?
Um, a couple things. One, I want people to understand that Asperger's and autism is not something to be ashamed of, and it's not something to be put down, but rather something to be celebrated, because the autistic brain, the Asperger brain, thinks in a way that can be of such contribution to society. And I want people to be proud of that. I want them to think that they have something that may differentiate them, but that something is a beautiful thing. And another thing is, people are different, and those little minor differences are what create the world we live in. And it's a good thing,
Right.
not a bad thing.
Right. Yeah, the message of my children's books that I wrote about a little penguin with autism, about my son. Every chapter ends with the mom saying to him, I love you just the way you are.
Yeah.
Just the way you are. And I feel like it's a message for everyone, not just for
Yeah.
your autistic child, but for, for
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
You
That's
know.
wonderful.
To accept them, and to accept people for who they are and the way they are, and to just love them anyway.
Right. And, at home, that's what I grew up with. My mom, has unconditional love for me and my sister. And we were never told that we should be ashamed of something or anything like that. We were very much accepted.
And you write a blog.
Yeah.
What's the name of your blog?
The name of my blog is the Nagibina Archives, and Nagibina is my middle name.
Okay.
It's Russian. And the Nagibina Archives, I just thought that was a cool title. And so on it, I don't have a whole lot of content right now, but I do have
What
my
kind of things do
article
you
on
write
there.
about?
So I write about theology, I write about social justice, I write about autism, I write about Disney, I do book reviews.
Oh, okay. So it's whatever interests you, basically. All the different things that you're
Basically,
interested in. It's not just,
right,
it's about
right.
you.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, but it's about the like, for example, if I write about interfaith work, I write about an interfaith project going on
Hmm.
and like why I care about it, but also how that contributes to the larger discussion
Hmm.
of, say, social justice or say the way we relate to people, that kind of thing.
Right. Are you so interested in social justice, do you think?
I think because I really want to think about the kind of world that I want to live in. And if I think about the kind of world that I want to live in, that involves treating people with respect, treating people fairly. And when there's an injustice, if I can do something about it, I'm going to do something about it. You know, I don't want to live in a world where people think that because they have darker skin or because their hair texture is a certain way that they're denied rights or they're denied services or anything. That's just not okay with me. I want us all to be treated with kindness, with respect.
Hmm. Where do you think that comes from? You don't know? You're just born that way?
I think so, because I didn't have like a defining moment early on where it was like, okay, now I'm going to be into that.
Yeah.
I think it's just something I've always been interested in.
Hmm. It's just injustice just gets to you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. I feel the same way. Yeah. It's
yeah,
you sort of reach that point where all of a sudden something just hits that trigger for you and you're like, no, no,
yeah.
that's not okay. Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
right. And you see the differences in how people are treated, and you think, well, if I'm treated this way, why isn't he or she treated the same way? What is going on here?
Right.
And I think that's the beginning.
Right. So what does the future hold?
The future
Where do you see
holds,
yourself in 5 years?
oh, in 5 years, I
This is what they
hopefully,
ask you in job interviews. Where do you see yourself
yeah.
in 5 years?
Hopefully
And they're
in
like, are you
five,
happy where you are? Or is there do you have some goals, some things you want to do?
yes, yes.
Are you're in theological seminary right now, you said?
No, I'm applying to Harvard Divinity. So
Oh, okay. Yeah.
hopefully in 5 years, I will have had graduated from Harvard Divinity
Right.
and
And
I will,
so why do you want to study that? Like, is there a goal that you have there? Do you want to be a
yes, there
minister?
is. I don't want to be a minister, but I do want to utilize the program specific. There's one specific one called the Religious Literacy Project, and it's at Harvard Divinity School. And it is an interdisciplinary approach to understanding the role that religion, ethics, and politics play in how we understand the world, each other, all those things. And as a result of that program, people can do really whatever they like. For me, I hope to take that back to Loyola Marymount, where I went to undergrad and build on a religious lit project that I sort of am creating now, and just build on that and expand on that and just continue that network and just really work with people who want to see the culmination of religious understanding and social justice and see what happens.
It's very abstract.
Yes, it is.
It's not literal black and white subject at all.
No, it isn't.
It's very,
No, and that's the irony of all of this
yeah.
is that I was born with such a literal mind, and here
Hmm.
I am thinking about these abstract things.
Yeah. Well, good for you. So is anything else you want to let anybody know? You want a message you want to get out or anything else you want to say in closing?
I think just that anybody who's on the spectrum, I do sort of say this specifically to people on the spectrum. I want you to know that you can do it. What you put your mind to, what you decide to do, you can do it. And nobody can say that your spectrum is, your autism is going to hold you back, because it is not, and celebrate it.
And just one other thing that I wanted to ask you about was you had said to me that you love Autism Speaks, and there's a group of autistic adults that take big issue with Autism Speaks. Um, what would you say to them? Do you
You
understand
know,
why they don't like Autism Speaks? Because they were trying to cure it, make it something, they made it sound like, oh, it's something evil and we should look for a cure for autism, and autistic people are insulted by that.
well, as they should be. Now, I do know that Autism Speaks released something detracting that cure statement.
Mhm.
And that actually is something I'm working on within myself of how am I going to move forward, knowing that information, knowing that that had happened.
Mhm.
I think that, like anything else, it's a journey of understanding and learning and adapting to new information that we're given. Um, it's complicated because these issues are not cut and dry. And I've certainly got my own questions, and I encourage them to have dialogue, get a conversation going,
Mhm.
and keep talking to people, because if we just make a blank statement and say, I'm never going to do this, I'm never going to associate with so and so, you cut yourself off from potential learning. And that's, in my mind, more dangerous.
And don't you think that's them being very black and white in their thinking?
I think it's a possibility.
It's like, no, no, you said this. You said this.
Yeah, yeah. Things do change, things do evolve. There's countless examples of it, and that doesn't mean that you roll over and you allow bad things to go on. Of course not. But it means that in addressing the issue, this is an opportunity, really, where we can say, okay, wait, this is what we want to see different. Let's work towards that.
Okay. Well, I'm going to let you go. Thank you very much for joining me today. It was a
Well, thank you
pleasure
for having
talking
me.
to you. All
All
right.
right.
Wonderful. Thank you for joining me. And you
Thank
enjoy
you
the rest
so
of your
much.
weekend. Thank you.
You too.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.
That's it for today's episode. I hope you enjoyed listening and it helped you gain a new perspective. To see the video version of the show, go to our YouTube channel, Robbie and Me, Autism Reality. If you're interested in buying our book series, Robbie's World and His Spectrum of Adventures, the link will be in our episode description, as well as my Instagram and Facebook pages. If you enjoyed the show and you'd like more content, please be sure to hit that like button, follow us, and don't forget to leave us a great review. Thank you for joining us. Be sure to join us again on our next episode of Spectrum Perspectives.
Thank you for joining us today. Be sure to join us again on our next episode of Spectrum Perspectives.